supporting you in your dog parenting journey. The Dynamic Dog Owner with Debbie Potter.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Dynamic Dog Owner, the podcast designed to support you, the dog parent, in your dog parenting journey. As you will know if you're a regular listener, this is the podcast designed to support you, the dog parent. We look at the whys, the hows, the emotional side of living with dogs rather than actual training. Because as we all know, we are 50% of the deal. If you're wanting actual training tips, exercises and direct advice on how to achieve things, check out our Pawcademy, our online training community. There's a link in the description. So this week, we're going to be talking about routines. Should you have a routine with your dog? Should you not have a routine with your dog? As always, you will know, if you listened to the podcast previously, that there's never an easy answer to such a question because it depends on so many different factors. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm quite a routine-driven person. Not that I like things exactly the same all the time, but my brain, I'm 99.9% sure I have self-diagnosed ADHD. My kids do, and they're autistic, so it's generally hereditary. And I see a lot of ADHD traits in myself. So I actually need a routine to help me stay on track. And then I find it so easy to break a routine. So I'll get into a really good rhythm. If I miss doing it for a day, it goes out the window completely and it takes me ages to get back on track, or I just slip out of that routine completely. And it's something that I've challenged myself with quite a lot recently, to try and stick in my routines because they're really good for me. So for example, just a few of the things that I've implemented is like having breakfast. It's taken me years to have a breakfast every single day. And now I have to have my breakfast. And I've kind of driven this routine into myself. I've made and created this routine. And I have the same thing every day because I'm boring. I used to take the mick. My dad, bless his heart, he had cornflakes, Kellogg's cornflakes, never an impersonation, never a cheap brand, always Kellogg's cornflakes, and a slice of toast with marmalade for breakfast every single morning for 50 years. Nothing changed. Except on a Sunday when he'd then have a boiled egg. Nothing changed in his breakfast every single day for 50 years. Exactly the same thing every single day. And we used to take the mick. I now get it, because if I don't have something in my breakfast, it breaks the routine, and then I'm like, oh, and it sends me into a little bit of a negative in terms of the rest of the day. And then I'm hungry because I didn't have my breakfast, and it just affects me quite a bit. So I've found a few times I've gone, I haven't had time, haven't had breakfast, and then, I'll snack or whatever. But now I have two options. So I have routine A, routine B, depending on whether I've got time or whether I've overslept, etc. So I have to work hard to put routines into my life. But if I miss a day or two, I've always found it really hard to get back into a routine. So routines can be really useful. We have the routine of doing things in the same order. Often what happens is we then effectively create habits rather than routine. What's the difference? Habits then we do automatically effectively. So, if I was to ask you what you do in like the bathroom in the mornings, what's the order you do things in, or what order do you put your clothes on? You probably would have to stop and think about it and go, hang on a minute, what order do I put everything on? But then you probably realise you do it in exactly the same order every single day because you do, without even realising. So at what point does that routine become a habit? Anyway, we go off on a tangent. Do our dogs need routine? Now, some dogs thrive upon routine. Some people thrive upon routine. Other dogs, actually a routine creates a rod for its own back. So partly this is about looking at and exploring the positives and the negatives for having a routine, and then what to consider, because I'm never going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. I'm just going to put ideas out there for you to consider, because everyone's life is different. Some people have a strong routine. So a bit like my dad with his Kellogg's cornflakes. We do the same thing every single day. So you're always up at the same time. You work the same hours every day. You do exactly the same thing every evening. Bish, bash, bosh. You walk your dogs around your routine. So if you work a normal standard 9 to 5 job, every day probably looks the same. We then wonder why our dog struggles at the weekend, because we're like, whoa, and they have to get used to a new routine for those 2 days, and then they go back to routine. A lot of people end up waking up at the same time and having the breakfast and starting the day at the same time on the weekend, because your body gets into a routine. So if you have quite a routine-driven life, what you tend to find is that your dog then becomes quite routine-driven, because they have to fit in around your routine. So they have their breakfast at the same time, they have, their walk at the same time, the days look the same. Some people don't have that routine, and therefore their day looks different every day. So, for example, my husband has done shift work for like 20 years. Every day is different. Some days he's home, some days he's on an early shift, some days it's a late shift, some days it's a night shift. It changes. If that is you and you have no set routine, now it's actually quite hard as a person to remember to do everything you need to do, because you're not in that routine driven. But your dog then has to fit in and change your routine every single day around you, because some days they go for a walk early in the day, some days it's late at night, sometimes they eat their dinner at this time, some days they eat their dinner at that time. For some dogs that's really unsettling, some dogs love it. So partly your dog's routine is going to fit around your lifestyle and your routine, because we live together, and you find that sort of mutual routine that works for all of you. So again, this depends very much on different people, different dogs. Some dogs don't care less about routine, and you can break it one day and it doesn't affect them at all. Other dogs have a really strong routine and they need that routine. And when it breaks, it actually causes them a lot of stress and a lot of upset. So that's where the question asks if should we or shouldn't we? So let's look at, if you have a strict routine, the positives are your dog knows exactly what to expect at what time every single day. So to them, life is very predictable. Great if you've got an anxious or a nervous dog who thrives on knowing what's coming next, because they need to know, because it makes them feel better. Some dogs that applies to. So if you've got that strong routine and your dog knows what they're doing, it actually means life is predictable, and therefore it reduces anxiety slightly. The only downside of that is, obviously that can boost their confidence, that can help them with everything else. The only downside is, what happens if that routine breaks? So, when you go on holiday, for example, when they have to stay somewhere else and someone doesn't follow your routine, when your life changes, as life does, and then your routine changes, that can often send dogs into a little bit of turmoil, because suddenly life's unpredictable. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to do. And it kind of upsets everything. That breaking routine can be quite upsetting for some dogs, or they demand their routine. So my mum's dog, two dogs ago, last dog, can't remember, Charlie, 1 dog ago, he was loved his walk routine. He went for a walk at the same time every day. Now, my mum was able to do so because her life was quite routine driven. As I said, mine isn't. Or it wasn't. It's better, but it wasn't. He'd come to stay with me on holiday if she went away, and he'd be like, it's 3 o'clock. It's 3 o'clock. Hello, it's 3 o'clock. And he'd start getting quite unsettled and very demanding, because he wanted his walk at 3 o'clock. And I'd be like, mate, I ain't got time to do it now. We don't go for a walk on a set time. We do it whenever. So he would then find that very annoying and upsetting, and it would cause him stress, because he's like, but I always go at 3 o'clock. So why can't I go at 3 o'clock now? On the other hand, you've got dogs like Rem, for example. He is very routine driven. Whether he needs it or not, I don't know. I think it's partly because of his character, his attachment, his little bit of quirkiness. I wouldn't say it's anxiety, but he has a lot of emotions. I haven't necessarily stuck to a routine in terms of time, but he knows if I do one event, it leads to the next. So whatever time I get up, whether it be 5:20 for work day, whether it be 9 o'clock on a Saturday, the routine starts at that point, and then this happens. So he knows as soon as I wake up, I'm going to go in the bathroom, I'm going to go downstairs, we're going to have breakfast, I give him his breakfast, and then we go for a quick walk because he won't wee in the garden. And it doesn't matter. Like if I said to him, but Dad's home, he'll take you out in half an hour. He's like, no, you need to take me now because I always go for a wee at this point. So I have to take him out for those 10 minutes or even 5 minutes. It's literally just going out for 2 minutes for a wee and then back in sometimes. But he knows that that's the pattern. That's what happens. So it's not necessarily time dependent, which is very handy, but it's event based. Is it a pain? Sometimes. But generally it's not, because it's not, I don't have to get up early. That's important to me. But then equally, he will ask for mealtime. He's like, hey, it's dinner time. I'm like, the other two don't give a monkeys. I could forget to feed them. They wouldn't care less. But Rem's like, 6 o'clock, you normally feed us at 6 o'clock. Hello. And I'm like, actually, we don't normally. We just feed you after dinner. When I've had my dinner, I feed you. So sometimes that's 5 o'clock, sometimes it's 6 o'clock, sometimes it's 7 o'clock. It depends. But he asks for it because he knows around that time, it should probably be dinner time. The others don't care. He knows patterns around when we go for walks, what we do at certain points, and he remembers them. So some dogs, it actually becomes a little bit of a nuisance and it controls them a little bit too much, and they are expecting the next thing, and therefore when you break that routine, again, it causes a little bit of anxiety because they're like, why is the next thing not happening? I'm expecting it. And I don't know about you guys, but it actually causes me a little bit of stress. So I'm like, mate, just chill out. We don't need to eat right now. I'm going to do it in 10 minutes. He's like, no, it needs to be now. So it can be a real pain. Now, if you don't have a routine, is that better? Is that not better? Who knows? I personally prefer it because my dogs are never expecting something. So one of mine is routine driven, the other two aren't. They wouldn't care less. If every day looks different, if I've walked them, if I don't walk them, if I feed them late, if I feed them early, whatever. They honestly couldn't care less. They just go with the flow. Personally, I find it easier because I'm not driven, or like I'm not confined by, you must do this at this time for me. They're not necessarily anxious dogs like Rem is. So there's kind of like that chicken and egg situation. Does the anxiety breed the routine, or does the routine breed the anxiety? Obviously, if you don't have a routine, you might forget to do stuff like feed them. I rarely do. But occasionally I've gone, oh God, it's 9 o'clock, I haven't fed the dogs. Because after my dinner, I got sidetracked doing something else and I forget. Does that matter? I don't know. Generally you're not going to forget to do these things regularly. Do dogs care if they've got a routine or not? Again, dogs who don't care if they've got a routine. Dogs who do. So should you have a routine? It is completely dependent on you and your dog and your life and how you all how you all live together. If you have got a strong routine with your life, then it probably makes sense that your dogs have quite a strict routine because it just fits in. If you don't, you can still fit a routine for them. It just makes it harder to stick to. So this is where it all comes down to. There's no right or wrong. There's no one size fits all. Everything is different depending on individual people's circumstance. So when someone says to you, oh, have you stuck to this routine with your dog? Ask yourself, does that routine actually support my lifestyle? Because we can't put our dogs or new puppies on a very strict routine if that's not how life's going to be. So often you'll read a puppy book and it will say, follow this routine. At 7 o'clock, do this. At 8 o'clock, do that. At 9 o'clock, do this. Do this, do this, do this. On paper, sounds amazing. But when it comes to practical living, can you sustain that for the rest of their lives? If you stick to a very, very strong routine, are they, like Rem, going to adopt that routine and go, right, this is what I have to do forever? And then you go, well, shit, I'm back at work now because I've had a month off for my new puppy. I'm back at work and that routine's got to change. So before you put a routine in place, just think, can I sustain this routine forever? Do I want to sustain this routine forever? Do I want life to be more flexible? And that's where, you can make that decision as to whether it suits you and your lifestyle, as to whether a strict routine works and can work, or whether you want to do things a little bit more cash. I feed them when I've eaten. I take them out when I've taken them out. I fit these things in around what I'm doing, whenever that may be, rather than the strict routine. Now, obviously, some dogs' routines change when, like, the clocks change, for example. A lot of people will say to us, that, oh, the clock's changed, taking my dog ages to get in a new routine, because they're so driven by the schedule that dogs smell like changes in the sort of smells of the world throughout the day. So there's a thing that dogs can smell time. They can't tell the time like read a clock, but they can smell the changes that happen throughout the day, depending on sort of as the earth heats up in the summer, when litter smells are released, when certain things happen, different routines, etc. They pick up on so much more than we'll ever know. So when that changes and the clock suddenly change, a lot of dogs go, whoa, weird, what's going on? Weirdly, Rem, who is very, very sensitive to routine, doesn't care less when the clocks change. It doesn't make him get up earlier. It doesn't make him demand food earlier, which tells me his routines are actually really strong around me and what I do, and if I have been regular with doing something at the same time. So for him, actually, me not being in a routine is better for him, because he takes his routine on what I'm doing. Hence, I can have a lay-in and he just lays in bed because mum hasn't got up, therefore the routine doesn't start, rather than him being reliant on a time. Hopefully that makes sense. Think about yourself, basically. Don't think I have to stick to a routine because somebody told me to, or this routine works for somebody else. What routine works for you and your lifestyle? Some dogs need it, some dogs don't. Some people need it, some people don't. So think about you and what works for you before you implement a strict routine. If you have a routine, that's absolutely fine. If you don't have a routine, you go with the flow, that's fine too. Whatever works for you is all good. Hopefully you have found the episode useful. And it's made you think a little bit about routines, especially important if you're obviously getting a puppy or have a young dog that you don't want to be bound by routines by. If you found the episode useful, of course, as always, comment, message, share. Do check out the Pawcademy, and I will see you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to The Dynamic Dog Owner with me, Debbie Potter. See you next time.